And it really goes back to a future me. I've always been locked in on a future self because what that does is it prioritizes around the things that matter most. The worst thing you can do is avoid the greatest formula, and that's the who is greater than the how. Everybody in this world has been a protege at some point in time. All the greats were a protege before they became a protege. So check the ego at the door.
Welcome to Benefits Broker Boost, the show that gives employee benefits brokers practical strategies to grow, scale, and streamline their business. Presented by Plansight, where innovation meets efficiency in employee benefits. Now, let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Benefits Broker Boost. I'm joined today by Cole Rodgers. Cole, thanks for being here.
Beyond grateful, Adam. This is an honor, and it's going to be absolutely incredible, the conversation that we have.
Yeah,
so thank you.
I'm super excited. I reached out to Cole. I think the first thing that caught my eye was that you are a world record holder for Murphs in 24 hours, which makes me tired even just thinking about it. But yeah, talk to us about that. Is that official now? I think you said you're still getting everything.
It's in the process of them giving us the official stamp, Guinness giving us the official stamp. That was a process that started almost 6 years ago when my mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And I'm a big advocate of our veterans, and also always want to make sure everybody remembers the fallen. And Lieutenant Michael Murphy, he is just a man that had a tremendous amount of character, gave his life for his brothers. And his workout in particular, the CrossFit workout, the Murph, really came at a time in my life and my also career that I needed it the most, and helped me transform myself into my future self, all while honoring him and men like him. And of course, remembering the families that loved them so deeply. But when my mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, stage 3, I had just completed a 55-hour crucible through my organization, School of Man. So we run 3 crucibles, a 12-hour, a 24, a 55, and there's a curriculum that goes along with it to create just more healthy, resilient men. And I told one of my closest friends, he's also a coach of mine, Chris Black, I said, hey, I'm going to set the world record of most Murphs in 24 hours because I wanted to walk alongside my mother as she went through her process. And I tell people all the time, because someone asked me this the other day, Adam, they asked me what the hardest part was. And I said, well, resilience is built in the quiet, heroic moments that no one sees. And like just getting up time and time again and recommitting to not just really the goal, but who you are truly becoming was probably the most challenging yet rewarding. But that's the same thing that any cancer patient goes through too, when you're delivered that kind of news. So along the way, I learned a tremendous amount about myself. So it took 6 years of doing the boring stuff and waking up and saying yes and swinging my feet off out of the bed and onto the floor and finding a deeper why, a why that's connected with the who, for me to be able to conquer what we were able to conquer in March. And I say we because there was no way that I was going to be able to do it without a super who. And I'm blessed to have a super who because that does help you with the how, because I came up short several years in a row, and your brain starts trying to work against you, saying, what, you're 40, you're 41, why are you doing this? You know, you don't have to prove anything. But I did, and I'm so glad I did, because I have this memory of my mother who just recently passed on November 2nd. She passed on November 2nd. But she walks in at hour 17. I'm sitting in this blue chair, and it was 17 or 18. I'm kind of getting my timeline a little fuzzy. But at hour 17, 18, I'd already burned 17,000 calories at that point. And I didn't want to move anymore. Like my body was basically getting to that place of like, hey, man, I can't take you any further. My hands were ripped. My lats from the pull-ups were screaming. Abductors were screaming. And there I was sitting in this blue chair. And one of my guys, because when you do a Guinness World Records and you don't bring them in, Adam, you have to, I mean, it's a full-on event. It's got to be recorded. You got to have witnesses. You got to have people that you have to have different shifts for, every so many hours. And one of my guys comes up to me and he says, hey, man, I need you to get up right now. I need you to keep moving. I had some choice words that I would not say on this podcast because you're in a very raw and emotional state. And I take pride in mastering my emotions. But the one person that got me out of my chair was my mother. And we all have those chair moments. She walked in, and at that point, she had been losing some weight, and it just like lit a fire in me. And there's a picture of her, if you can imagine, there's a rig, pull-up rig, and she's standing right in front of that rig. There's cameras, of course, and she's just watching me, and she's folding her arms, and my mother's her faith was her sustenance, and she'd been praying rosaries for me the entire time. And man, it just got me out of that chair. That's what helped push me over that hill, if you will, that I was just struggling to climb up, and ended up getting it done. Got into 20 rounds. The record was held by a young man in France. I think it was around 19 rounds, much younger age wise than me. And that was another point to prove to so many of the people that I serve in my ministry is like, hey, that's just a number. I'm here to get younger while everybody else gets older. Uh, we were able to get that done in March. And in order to achieve something you've never achieved before, Adam, you got to become somebody you've never been before. And that requires sacrifice. There's been a
Yeah.
lot of sacrifice along the way.
Sounds like it. And just for those listening that don't know how many pull-ups that is, how many miles that is, quantify that, as you got in 20 rounds.
Yeah, so to quantify it, it's, Lieutenant Michael Murphy, Medal of Honor recipient, was known for this workout in his kit, in his gear on base when he was deployed. And it was a mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats in a mile run. And it was with at least a 20-pound kid. I mean, he probably wore a little bit more than that. So that's what I did in March. And I did that. I completed 40 miles, 2,000 pull-ups, 4,000 push-ups, 6,000 air squats, all under 24 hours. Yep.
With weight.
With weight, with 20 pounds, yes.
That's
And
wild.
I'm 41 years young.
That's wild. That's a really, really cool accomplishment. So we connected on that, and I got to know your background a little bit. Yeah, you kind of grew up in the benefit space through McGriff, which was acquired about a year ago by MMA.
Yeah.
You lead a team there of, I think you said 18
Close.
producers, mostly working with the larger clients. So you've got a rich history in employee benefits, which we're going to get into a little bit today, because the goal of the podcast is that anytime someone takes 45 minutes or an hour out of their day to watch an episode of this, I want them to walk away tomorrow with something they can do tomorrow to
Sure.
better themselves and their business. So yeah, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I didn't back my way in the industry like most folks do. I was honestly cut from the cloth. My father, he was in leadership sales for Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I remember going to him, Adam, when I was like 20. And I knew what I wanted to do. I really did from a young age. Clarity is something that so many people seek, and they forget the cost of entry and the price you have to pay before you really, skyrocket in growth. And I really was clear on what I wanted to do in this world. I've always been drawn to having an impact on people around me, and saw what my father did growing up. Didn't know quite what he really did and what insurance really was, but that's how I got my start. Not with Blue Cross, but at 21, I became an enroller, and I moved off to Tennessee and, worked for an affiliate of several Blue Cross plans and the schools and serving the people. And it's funny. It comes full circle at 41. I remember at 21, it was like, how am I supposed to relate with somebody like, someone that has 2 kids married? And the one thing I will say, in the 4 years of the beginning of my career, the number one thing that I learned is that everybody communicates, very few connect. And in that moment, over 20,000 conversations that I was able to have, it really helped me build my emotional intelligence muscle, let alone my persistency muscle, because you have to have thick skin in this business. But it also helped me really understand what our country is built of, and the great people that that make up, just all the companies that we serve, and how they need to be served. And that's really what drew me to the industry in the first place. And that's how I fell in love. Then I decided to make a move when ACA was signed into law, went over to Regions Insurance Group. And then that's kind of how just the whole thing got started for me on the consultant side. And McGriff bought us, and then we just sold recently to Marsh McLennan Agency. And to clarify on the 18, that 18 includes the super glue of the operation, the best of the best when it comes to taking care of our clients from east to west, north to south as well. And that includes producers, but our operations team is pretty phenomenal, and we're a tight family.
That's awesome. That's a really cool background, really cool way to get in the industry. Yeah, you're right. I've talked to quite a few people, and none of them have had that clear of a line into the industry as you have, and that early of a that's what I'm going to do moment. A lot of people kind of happen into it. I've talked to a few that have had family members that got them into it, and that's kind of what they wanted to do early on. But that's cool to have that clarity as early as you did.
Yep.
That background is going to lend a lot of credibility to these next couple of questions. You've trained a lot of people. You've grown a team. You've grown your book of business from the ground up. What are the things that you see brokers doing now who are setting themselves apart in this space?
Yeah. Well, let's start off with the psychology of everything. So 80% of this is psychological. And then 20% is, of course, around the skill set and what I like to call attributes. The attributes are like a code that runs behind the app that you just simply do not see. So before I get into really answering that question, our business has been built from the ground up. We didn't inherit one client. It's been built from zero. A tremendous amount of resilience has also been built. And if I'm talking to an audience that's just really getting it into the industry and you're looking to build your book of business and or maybe scale it, or you've hit a point to where you feel like you're plateauing. A few things that I always talk to my team about is this: if your business could talk, what would it say? And that's a big fundamental question you need to ask as you're getting started. And it really goes back to a future me. I've always been locked in on a future self, because what that does is it prioritizes around the things that matter most. The worst thing you can do is avoid the greatest formula, and that's the who is greater than the how. Everybody in this world has been a protege at some point in time. All the greats were a protege before they became a protege. So check the ego at the door. And that's the one thing that I learned early on is that, look, I'm not going to go see a dentist with bad teeth. Therefore, I'm not going to take advice from a bad consultant. But there are people that do have the codified playbook and the system, and they continue to reinvent themselves time and time and time again. They don't get complacent. They don't hit a marker like 2 million, 3 million, or whatever that number is and saying I'm done, and they rest on like a past victory. So then it bleeds into what you were asking me in regards to where do you see folks separating themselves today? Well, it's those that are very good in when it comes to anticipation. All right, you can go on LinkedIn at any moment in time, and I guarantee you're going to find some influencer in our industry or influencer or a leader talking about what's going on in the space of healthcare or with PBMs, talking about how it's broken and how bad it is and the big bad carriers. Well, what are you actually going to be doing about it? That's my question. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to actually be part of the change, be a part of the solution, because we all have equal responsibility per se to make sure that this is better in the future than it is now. And that's why I get back to those that are really, really good know how to anticipate. They're 5 moves ahead on the chessboard. They're looking at AI and saying, I'm going to leverage AI. I'm not going to allow AI to leverage me. And that's where the true the true teams that continue to grow, that continue to scale, are the ones that are going to naturally just create such separation that the group over here, they're not going to ever be able to play catch up. They just really not. They are thinking and looking at it tactically different, and they're looking at it in a 3-dimension chessboard to where they're moving pieces way in advance than what you could ever think. And it's not just on the medical, the pharmacy, or that side of the house. It's the entire benefits ecosystem. That's where I see some of the folks out there separating themselves from the market.
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, a mentor of mine talked about that and looking for the things that's going to be the next thing, but not just looking for it to know about it, but looking for it to make action on it, right? And that's what you're talking about is look for those things that are changing in the industry, but what are you doing about it? Right? What are you seeing?
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. This morning before we got on the call, I was on a phone call with an incredible company that's about to hit the market with a splash and has nothing to do with medical and pharmacy. We can all agree that engagement is just a buzzword in our industry. You hear it time and again. I don't care if it's in the broker space or you're working with clients. If you're not out in the market, this might not fully connect, but in the market, your clients, regardless of what industry, they're saying, hey, we need more engagement. Well, then you think about it like, well, you got 15 benefits. And if you ask a client like, hey, what does engagement mean to you? Or what are your numbers behind engagement? They're not going to be able to answer it, right? So there's a company right now, it's called Benny Vibe, and the Benny Vibe operating system is they have developed the first emotionally intelligent benefits concierge. So that would be the brain of Benny Vibe. And then you've got Benny Pulse, which is the heartbeat. And so from there, then they've also built what's called Benny Shield, which is plugging a financial leak for the carriers when maybe an employee leaves on the supplemental health side and there's very low conversions. So there's unique and innovative things that are coming out in the marketplace that if you're not ahead of it, you're not positioning it, you're not looking at it differently, you don't replace an existing model with the same model. You build an adjacent, and that's what's basically going to happen in real time, I think, but a lot faster than people think. The way we were doing business before will not be the way we are doing business in the next 3 to 5 years, I firmly believe.
Yeah, I agree with that definitely. With the way the technology is advancing, it's not going to be even recognizable. And
It's not.
it's not right now. Like if you told me 3 years ago that I'd have this assistant that I could basically bounce any question off of as I'm preparing for things, as I'm studying things, and it's got this, and not have to go search through Google and try to find the information. It's going to just deliver it all to me. I probably wouldn't have believed it, right? So it's changed a lot in the last 3 years. I think it's going to change even faster in the next 3 to 5. So totally agree with that.
Yeah, and just finishing up on that question, going back to the anticipation, the chess moves, just go back in history and look at the patterns. Success leaves clues.
Mhm.
Success leaves clues. I mean, there's inflection points in history. We're at an inflection point, in my personal opinion. And if you do not adopt, if you do not adopt it now, you'll never be able to scale your business. And or go back to the 1950s and see how many Fortune 500 companies are still in existence today
Yep.
because they weren't willing to evolve.
Yep. Definitely. Definitely. It's pretty eye opening. Okay. So that's the people who set themselves apart kind of in the positive direction. What are the biggest causes that you see? We've got kind of the middle class, the people that really excel, and then you've got the people that don't ever make it as they're trying to get into the industry. What's the biggest cause there that you see of people not succeeding in the space?
Yeah, I heard the attrition rate the other day was roughly 80%, or meaning like 20% of folks stuck. So, I mean, I think they might have a better success rate at BUDS, but basic underwater demolition seal training, than there is in this industry. I'm being serious.
Yeah.
And I think number one, there's three landmines that just really can derail someone's career. And this is a good teaching lesson for everybody if you're even working with your clients. The first one is being excessively optimistic. And what I mean by that is a lot of folks get in this industry and don't realize how hard it is. And there is definitely a struggle principle that's in place, or the sacrifice principle. And I knew when I was 27, I made a calculated decision that at that time, I had a fiance who's my wife now. We didn't have a family. I could have taken the step back in income, which I did. I cut my income in half. I had a short runway to validate. And for those that might not know what validation means, is that, hey, the company bet on me, but hey, I've got to pay it back at least at 4X. But I didn't have any systems. I didn't have any, I had a carrier experience from the roller side, and I had that hunger emotion, that grit factor, to make it happen. But the minute I started, I actually blew out my Achilles. It took me 6 months to close my first group, and I had less than $5,000 in revenue, which is commission. And I had my mom driving me around, Adam, to cold call on companies local to here in Central Arkansas.
Mhm.
But one thing I did know is I had a like U Inc. is what I call it. Meaning, like, I had a brand. I knew schools very well, technology very well. I knew how to position cases very well. And when I finally closed that first case, it tipped a domino. I went from, like, hey, being a generalist to being more of a specialist. I knew voluntary benefits. I knew technology. I knew enrollment. And this was back in 2010. And this was really the emergence of benefit technology, similar to kind of where I mean, AI is going to surpass that. But I started the industry when benefit technologies came into the industry. So I knew that's where brokers were going to be looking for diversification of revenue streams, and clients were going to be asking more of it. So I just retooled and just pivoted my business on a dime. And that's the other thing. A lot of guys and gals that are getting into this business, they don't look at it as their business. They look at it as an operator versus an owner. I've always looked at it as if I'm an owner of my business, and that my responsibility to scale was to build an incredible team, but I had to do certain things before I could do that. But I would say that the number one reason that folks truly find their way out of the industry is that they're excessively optimistic. The second one is going to be, I knew it was going to be tough. Now, I had that mentorship from my father and key figures in the industry. I found people that were further down the path than me. I looked exactly why they were successful, because success leaves clues. I adopted it. I saw where they were actually getting stale in their business because they were getting complacent. So I made sure put that in the back of my mind. But I also examined assumptions. A lot of folks that get into this don't examine assumptions. And then the third one is really ignoring the risk. So those three landmines can lead you down the path of playing stupid games, you win stupid prizes mentality. That's why I feel we have the attrition rate that we do. In addition to that, I think that our industry, now there's some agencies out there that do this really well. The protege model, the coaching model, longer runway model is really easy to get enamored on what kind of lifestyle you can build. But
Mhm.
if you don't locked in why and you don't have a super who, you're just going to flounder, in my
Mhm.
opinion. You go through buds and you make it through Hell Week and you eventually earn your trident. You didn't do that by yourself. That's not done by yourself. There's no difference in our industry. So that's another a piece of the puzzle too.
Yeah, that's so valuable. There's a quote that says comparison is the thief of joy.
Oh, yeah.
And you get into this industry and there are people with $4 million books and you're like, I can make a lot of money.
Right.
And you don't realize the sacrifice that went in to get there, right? When
Yeah.
you're examining other people's accomplishments, it's always really easy to write off the work that went into that
Yeah.
and overvalue the work that you've put into where you are, right? It's easier to just kind of discredit someone else's work and give more credit to yours. And so I think that is something that I see a lot is people underestimating what it's taken certain people to get to where they are.
Well, and I'll put an exclamation point on this part of our conversation. I had a conversation with one of my peer producers a few weeks ago over breakfast, and there's a dichotomy to the letter R. The R stands for relationship or it can stand for resentment, Adam. And what I mean by that, and the one thing I'm always asking my producers, my team, we just did this in our 2025 step back, is this time next year, if the R stands for relationship, what relationship do you want to have with yourself and with your business? So what I mean by that is like, what are the things that need to happen between now and then that's going to put a genuine smile on your face? And what that typically leads to is like, okay, if freedom's knocking at your door, what are the things that you need to let go that honestly you just need to cut in order to be able to open it?
Mhm.
So many people are not willing to do that. So then they get stuck at a 500,000 or maybe 1 million and their identity is outdated. They started in that small group market because they wanted to learn. And then they get kind of timid around like, oh, group size, something that, maybe a 500 life group to them could be really large. And then they have this outdated story and narrative that they run. And they don't have a very clear, they had a future me at one time. Now it's time to take the next logical step but they don't feel like they're ready for it. So then they get this outdated internal narrator going and then they get stuck there. So what does that lead to? The R eventually slides to resentment. It's
Mhm.
no different than the baker baking the cake, running the cash register, being the waitress, and then opening up the door while doing the books all at the same time. So you've got the group that simply doesn't make it after year 3, 4, or 5. Then you got the group that does, and then they get stuck and they quickly move over to the resentment piece of it and their business starts running them versus them running their business.
Mhm.
So there's that tug of war, if you will, between relationship versus resentment. And I think that's another thing that folks struggle with in the industry.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective, and that's a whole rabbit hole that we could go down about keeping control
Yeah.
to yourself. But that's that's really valuable input is thinking about the relationship that you have with yourself and the future self that you once promised to yourself. So yeah, really great advice so far. This is awesome. I want to do a little bit of a shift into the technical skills of growing a book of business, right? Well, we talk a lot about the mindset that it's going to take, the things that you've got to really commit to yourself and do. I've seen you talk quite a bit about this in a lot of your posts and in some of the podcasts that you've been on, but you're phenomenal at this, both the sales and marketing piece of this business. I'd love to dig into some of the sales advice that you have first, and then we'll shift over to marketing advice as people are trying to grow their book of business. You get in front of a medium or large employer group, and you've got to close the deal. How do you think about that differently than you think a lot of the industry thinks about that to help you transact that business?
It's okay. So the 3S system is what I use. And most people get this wrong because they want to start with strategy, story, then state. You got to go state, story, then strategy. People don't buy off logic, they buy off of emotion. Everyone are a consumer in some form or some fashion. And Maya Angelou said it best too, it's not about what you say as much as it matters how much you make them feel. That's the key right there. So when I take a few steps back, you don't even have to be a technician in the sense you could be a self-funded wizard and guru, but if you get in those rooms and you completely are underwhelming, doesn't matter. All that technical experience that you have and that wizardry you might have with spreadsheets and data analytics and all this knowledge power doesn't matter if you don't connect. If you don't understand how to connect and you don't know how to shape a story and then get to the strategy, your closing ratio is going to go way down. So the first and most important thing is getting the client or the prospective client in the appropriate emotional state.
Mhm.
Okay. And I'll give you an example. So earlier this week, I was with a peer producer, and not every meeting is going to go like the way you had planned. In fact, Mike Tyson says it best. Everybody has a plan until they are punched in the mouth. But at the same time, how you do prepare matters, and our team is relentless in around our preparation. And the one thing I task my team with, just like what you go on and you see Netflix, you done done, or Amazon Prime, all those are by design. Everybody's being primed at some phase in the day to purchase some. All right. So I'm getting into behavioral science and psychology, and I'll get to what happened earlier this week. But with my team, if we have a prospective meeting, a finalist meeting, one thing that we're doing first is through the art of questions. See, we're strategic thought partners at the end of the day.
Mhm.
I'm not a consultant. I'm not a broker. I'm a strategic business partner. I'm a strategic thought partner. So what are the three things that we want this specific client or prospective client to feel when they get off of the call, right? So ours were confident, clarity, so reassurance, and then conviction. So what then that does for your team is it locks them in an emotional state, and you put yourself into the shoes of your prospective buyer. Now, the next step, which is the most important part, is this is a 4-part process. Number one, you have to prioritize your questions. People talk about this all the time. There's plenty of sales training about this, but it's not the question, it's how you ask it, the energy you bring to it,
Mhm.
how it hits their emotional center and their heart set more than it does the technical piece. Because the technical piece will eventually come, right? And you have to prioritize around the things that matter most to them. It makes zero sense if I walk into a meeting and they've got a multi-million dollar deficit and I'm wanting to talk about something that's not even relative to them. But believe it or not, Adam, so many people do that, or they're not willing to lean in and let themselves be human and be vulnerable. And that's where courage is built. And so that's the process we bring to it first and foremost. And regardless how that meeting shakes out, I think so many people, especially those who are trying to validate, they're pressing, they're pressing, they're pressing. Your number one goal should always be to leave them better than you find them. So earlier this week, we stepped into a prospect meeting. It was a Tuesday, full of meetings. It's great. It's a fantastic day, a lot of activity. Quickly, this specific account or client, prospective client, everything is direct. And so the contact there, more guy. And my first question was, and I was there to be more in a mentor style role, is like I just get to the heart of it. Like, well, what perceived value do you even see in a broker consultant? Before I even really get into some of our heart set questions. And he just goes, and he starts telling us what the perceived value is. So I was wanting my other producer to take that, run with it, ask more questions. He did. It kind of he went more kind of product based. So then fast forward to the afternoon, I step into the arena with another prospect, and it was all about future me. That's what one thing brokers do not do a very good job of is getting your clients in a future mindset and helping them reverse engineer backwards because progress equals happiness. If you're not prioritizing around the things that matter most to them, you're not bringing new innovative ideas, even if they say no to it, that builds a narrative to their success criteria, and you're not transparent. Keep in mind, compensation, it's a great conversation to have. All right.
Mhm.
I should be having it. But if you don't know how to tie it into the value promise, it falls on deaf ears at the end of the day. And then last piece of those meaningful results. And so that's how we structure the story, but it's through the art of questions. And that's the first thing I said to her. This process said, hey, I'm not here to sell you anything. So you can kind of drop your shoulders a little bit. And she naturally dropped her shoulders because they're going to mirror your energy and they're going to mirror how well you are versed in the art of emotions, right? And you know there's scripts that are running in the back of their mind. No different if you're about to get a broker of record and there's about to be a change. Well, do a lot of people like change? The answer is no. And if you overwhelm their brain, then what do? They revert to comfort. So you have to be willing to understand, like, hey, you made the right choice, and we're going to showcase, to you our work because we're working for you right now. We don't have to wait for a BOR letter. So I say all that because it's very important to the overall strategy that you take into these meetings and how you are positioning emotions, how you are positioning the right, thoughtful, feeling questions, and how you are helping them, even in that real time, even if it's 30 minutes, build something that they have not built before. So then when you do that, then they're going to feel something they've never felt before. And so when you walk out that door, then you've just left them in the most old school marketing way, where it's like, okay, next time he calls me and he shows proof of concept, or they help us build a blueprint or a codified playbook, whatever it is, words matter. Then boom, guess what? Your speed of trust is that much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. That's phenomenal advice. And I've been on both sides of the selling equation more times than I can count. We all have. And we can all identify. I've got one specifically that came to mind as you did that. We can all identify that one sales rep that didn't take the time to ask the right questions and just jumped into product immediately. Mine for me was buying a truck. Okay. I have 4 children and I'm married. So I need 6 seats. And the truck was to pull our camper. So we're all going to be in the truck and pulling the camper at the same time. We're not taking 2 cars every time we go on a camping trip. I need a 6-seat truck. It very, very significantly narrows down what works for me. The first place that I go, I'm looking at a truck in the lot. Salesperson comes out, doesn't ask me any questions except for, "Are you looking for a truck?" Yeah. What year? And basically start to get into it. What make, what model, what year. That's all he asks, and starts showing me all these trucks that are 5 seats. Doesn't even take the time to. He could have narrowed down to probably 3 trucks that they had on the lot that had 6 seats, and those would have been my choices. But instead, he shows me several trucks, would waste my time basically. Doesn't even give me an option that works for me. And at the end, I said, "Well, I have 4 kids. I need 6 seats." And then finally, he takes me to the right ones, but could have significantly sped up that process, but also painted a much better picture. If he asks, are you all going to be in the truck all the time? He didn't know I had 4 kids, but if he asks if you're all going to be in the truck at the same time, yeah, we're using it mostly for pulling the camper. Now we can start to create that future self, right? That you talked about, and say, great, how often do you go camping? Get all our emotions going about how much we love camping as a family, and that sale becomes much easier. But didn't ask a single question. Showed me about 10 vehicles that wouldn't work for me, and then I had to just say, I need 6 seats.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can all identify those, but sometimes it's easiest and most comfortable for the seller to jump into the solution as quickly as possible and just kind of hope that you solve the problem that they're looking for, right?
Yeah, and I've been that guy, and I've learned the hard lessons. I've paid the dumb tax, if you will,
Mhm.
and those are just lessons along the way. Hence why you have to constantly be in rebirth, reinvention mode. That's just it. Like, this is a craft for me. I take this very seriously. I mean, not just because I put food on the table for my family and Christmas presents under the Christmas tree, not just for my family, but for also other families, but because the employees we serve, those 20,000 plus that I've met with in the first 4 or 5 years of my career, they need us, and they need us to do our job at the highest level. And I just have personal experience. So that's why I bring a lot of passion, a lot of purpose to our conversations. And I don't think that producer brokers get burned out as much as they get bored out. I firmly believe that because at the core, if you have built a book of business, in our industry, unless you've created your own agency, you've scaled that own agency, which has, we've seen tremendous consolidation over these past 10 years.
Mhm.
You still have the responsibility of building your dream inside the dream. But, a lot of producer brokers, like I said earlier on, don't look at themselves as an owner. So therefore they limit themselves. And that's why you always have to be in reinvention mode. But I think that proximity, Adam, matters. Proximity becomes power, it becomes influence. and we are in a very competitive landscape with what we do. But at the core, we're all entrepreneurs, or else we wouldn't have gotten in the business that why we got into it in the first place. You just want to be around the right folks to help you go to the next level, whatever that level might be for you at the end of the day. And be willing to raise your hand and say, look, I've gotten to this point. I need help. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to grow. I'm willing to feed my mind. I'm willing to test new ideas out. That's what I'm constantly.
That's awesome. Well, that's so valuable. So that was the sales piece. Now the marketing piece, right? How are you creating that differentiating factor that gets attention, that gets the initial meeting? That's a piece that a lot of people struggle with.
I would say that's the hardest piece, right? And you've got some that are extremely good at opening doors, and then they get into the meeting and they're not
Mhm.
strong, progressing that relationship. And then on the flip side, you've got some that are not very good at opening doors, but then they're really good when it comes to a meeting.
Yeah.
And so I will say this, I think the marketing landscape for our business is quickly and rapidly changing, and I don't think that people are taking notice. Now, do I think that it'll ever get to the place of like TikTok or Instagram? Yes and no. I feel like the buying behaviors are going to shift over these next 3, 5, 7 years. So people who look at, I'm just going to use LinkedIn as an example because that's how you and I got connected. If you're just looking at LinkedIn to share stuff like from your company, don't waste your time. Like you're providing no value to the LinkedIn community. You're doing everything else that everybody else is doing. I appreciate you being on there, but you need to be building a brand. That's your like you Inc. You have to be building a brand. You have to be breaking through the noise. And the cool thing is about our industry is pretty niche. You can do that,
Yeah.
right? You can definitely do that now more than ever. So we are behind the times, I would say, in some ways, but that's a part of the marketing aspect of it. But unless you know exactly what you're going after, why you're going after, who you're attracting it to, right? And you're just going to be somewhat of a generalist. Hey, use LinkedIn to network. But me, I use LinkedIn to build own personal brand. That's my big thing. And I'll give an example. I've made several calls to several large clients who quickly go to see my LinkedIn content or, they're going to consume the resilience playbook. They already know me before I walk into the door. They get to see the human side of it from that. So then going back to the actual, as old school tactics, does cold calling still work? I think that's a question that a lot of people have. I think cold calling in 2005 looks different than 2025. 100%. And it's a leverage of time and a leverage of resources and being smart. They print more money, they don't print more time. And so those that have that ability to, understand that your network is going to eventually equal your net worth, that's where you're going to get more business. So my recommendation is sure, go for it. Cold call. I still cold call to a degree. It's like Tom Brady doing wind sprints at the end of the day. But where I'm leveraging myself more is and again, it's because of where I am in my career too. In the beginning, it was cold call. It was showing up and it was understanding, okay, this account equals this revenue. I don't want to spend a ton of my time in this market segment. So I got a lot more granular with my prospects and I changed my frame and raised my ceiling over time on who I was really going to approach and what that equated to in results. Nowadays, yes, I still cold call. I will still walk in, drop off cookies. It's good. It gets the heart rate up. It makes sure that I'm not falling into complacency. But where I'm leveraging is my network and also my LinkedIn presence so that when I do walk in these meetings or I make a phone call or they're wanting to know me or we answer an RFP, that that I have that greater of a success rate and there's more activity in the top of the funnel.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've had three very phenomenal LinkedIn marketers on the show already, and every single one of them, including yourself, have talked about the personal brand being the moat, right? Building personal brand on LinkedIn so that your prospects are seeing who you are and that's differentiating you from every other broker that wants to get there.
And I don't have 100,000 followers, Adam. I started really during COVID, after COVID, building my LinkedIn brand. And I was active on other social platforms, but it's never too late, I guess is the point I'm trying to say.
No.
And I saw that and I was like, you know what? I'm going to lean into LinkedIn. I'm going to start positioning myself differently. There's a place for my story inside my industry for those that carry the weight. I think people sometimes get tired, just like mainstream media and news, with the constant cycles on LinkedIn that we see, and whether it be, calling out the carriers, like I said earlier, or the PBMs. And I'm saying there's a place, time and place for all that. But are you building a brand? Or are you kind of on that other side of the world where, like mainstream media, you become a talking head after? And so, my following continues to grow. My impressions are really high. You get to see the real side of me, because our industry for the longest time has been built on wearing masks.
Mhm.
And people who you work with want to work with somebody that, yes, they can trust, but they can relate to. Plain and simple.
Yeah. And we're seeing that shift, right? We're seeing
Yeah.
a massive shift from large agencies saying, no, just only repost brand content, our press releases that we do, make sure you repost those, to them realizing, yeah, that personal brand, that relatable person on LinkedIn is actually what's winning business. It's not that everyone sees this massive name.
Well, this group that we closed yesterday, the first thing they said to me when they saw me in person, they're like, I had made a post and they've been tracking my 24 hours of Murph
Hmm.
and tracking, like, hey, when's the resilience playbook coming out?
Yeah.
That was what the conversation is about. It wasn't even about the business. We were at dinner and they said, well, tell me about this.
Yeah.
And my people that are with me are just kind of looking at me, but like, I enjoy doing that. That's the creative side of me too. That's the thing that I really was missing. I hit that wall or that plateau of, even at one point making a decision. I was like, I'm probably going to leave the industry. I was just, I was just bored. I was simply bored with it.
Hmm.
And that was back in 17, 18. And that required, and when something bothers me, I've got to go explore it, and then I've got to go change, and that's me. I always look back in the mirror and say, "Okay, what am I not owning?" And then I get into the work that has to be done, and that's where it gives me the creative side that creative out.
Yeah. I'm very similar that way. That's my ADHD.
Yeah.
But cool. This has been really, really great so far. I've got a few more questions, but we're running pretty short on time. So I'm gonna
Or
skip through a few of them. But I want to talk about the technology in the space. It's something that I have noticed that as consolidation happens faster, technology adoption is also speeding up in the space. I've seen you talk about this a little bit on other podcasts. How are you and your team leveraging technology and automation, AI, all of those things to stay on the forefront of operational efficiency?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We're super users of it. I said it earlier. AI will leverage you unless you leverage AI. You just got to know how to make it dance. And I think there's a statistic out there that they're saying that 55% of the knowledge based workers will be replaced in some form or some fashion by AI. I'm not saying that that's not correct. If you go
Mhm.
back in time, you can see what the Industrial Revolution did and so on and so forth. But what I will say is that AI to me is that inflection point we spoke of earlier. And the minute you can learn how to harness it, know how to prompt it, know how to build it, know how to leverage it in the most ethical ways, you're going to receive an abundance of time back. And that's key. Like so many people in our industry, the account managers are looking for freedom of time, freedom of purpose, freedom of worry. They just don't have it right now because they're running on old school operating systems personally. They're scared of adoption, like, "Oh, this could replace me." Similar to maybe a group saying, "If I hire y'all, are y'all going to replace me?" Some groups have viewed us as AI of the past
Mhm.
in a way. But our team is very much on the forefront of AI, and we use it strategically. We use it in so many different ways, let alone on the efficiency side. We use it as a thought partner, a strategic business coach. We use it as a prospect that is asking us the hard-hitting questions. We help make sure that we use it when we're prepping and game planning for finalist presentations, how to work through our flow. I mean, you name it, Adam, we're using it. Now, on the technology side of it, because my team spends a tremendous amount of time from benefits technology, I think we can also agree too that the benefits buying experience is pretty poor. Even though there might be an adoption of technology, the folks today in today's world, they want a Amazon Prime buying experience.
Mhm.
They want an Apple buying experience. That's what we've come to know. The average person only spends 17 minutes on his or her benefits a year, and benefits are boring until they're not. And I had this conversation earlier this morning with another client. And they're wanting to seek better engagement. Well, that's just a buzzword right now.
Mhm.
So, that's why like the platform Benny Vibe that I feel is going to be one of those, and several like it, are going to help transform and create emotional intelligence to where employees can create that connection. It's got to be, there has to be guardrails around it, but there's hyper personalization around it.
Mhm.
There's more nudges that give them that pulse every year before they get to open enrollment, let alone to the buying experience. Then AI on the back end is creating more efficiencies to streamline more processes with the EDI, API, payroll functionality. So that's where our team spends honestly 80% of our time. I will be frank. We're such a technology centric team, that's where when we're speaking with groups, yes, we've got the medical, the pharmacy, and we bring in a lot of teams to help us with that. We're pretty much on the forefront of that, and that's where I feel like everything is heading for
Yeah,
the most part.
I agree.
It's not going to remove the human element. What it's going to do, and I think this is where people are going to get tripped up. Freedom is scary to a lot of people. They say they want freedom, but then they don't know what the sacrifice is. And then when they get freedom, they don't know how to use it.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? And the best are going to be able to leverage to work on their business and scale.
Yeah. That's a key point that you just highlighted. I would say AI is not to the point where it's doing really well at completely replacing people yet. It might get
No.
there, but it's not there yet. It's doing a really good job of making people more efficient when it's done correctly. And so if you're worried about your job being replaced by AI, you have to ask yourself, if I'm becoming more efficient because of AI, what am I using that extra time to do? How am I adding more? Because we Plansight is AI, right? We're built into that RFP process. We always tell people when they're adopting Plansight is that this is going to save you time, but it's only going to give you an ROI if you know what to do with the time that you get back. And so that's what you have to ask yourself is,
All the bells and whistles you want are the tools that you want in your tool belt, but if you don't know how to use them, they're worthless. And that's the same conversation we had in our setback meeting on Tuesday. And one of our teammates were like, "Well, what am I supposed to do exactly?" Right? Like, focus on the relationship, not working in the weeds.
yeah,
Focus strategically, moving chess pieces well in advance, because the clients, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for proactivity.
yeah.
They're looking for results that are meaningful, more operational workflow. So yeah, I mean, Adam, to that point, our team's very well versed. We'll continue to get versed. We're going to continue to push into the AI world. It's not going to replace the human heartbeat. So quit with the apocalyptic
Mhm.
but you better learn how to use it before it leverages you.
But it will replace you if you don't figure out what to do with the extra time.
100%. That's what I'm saying. That's where it will leverage you.
Yeah,
And then there will be business owners that say, why am I continuing to keep this person on payroll?
yeah,
Those are just the facts.
yeah,
Those really are the facts.
yeah. If you've got Susie that uses AI and learns what to do with the extra time, and then you've got Jack that uses AI but doesn't learn what to do with the extra time. Well, Susie already knows how to use the AI, so let's add Jack's business to Susie's business, and she knows what to do with the extra time. And that's when you get replaced, right? It's the efficiency is there. If someone else can take over what you're doing and do both of your jobs, that's when you have a problem. But if you're creating tons of value with your extra time, you can't replace that. So,
Agreed.
awesome. A really, really helpful way to look at AI. And I think there's a lot of like skepticism around it. How much do we adopt it? Is it replacing people? So that's a really clear view on it. So thanks for that.
Uh-huh.
The next piece I want to talk about is habits and routines. It's obvious that you've got really, really strong habits and routines built. You don't do the things that you've done without it. It's one of my favorite topics. The probably the most impactful book in my life has been Atomic Habits. Um, just
James.
yeah, just reframing the way that I look at habits. But based on the intro that I gave, obviously you've got some good habits, right? You've done incredible things physically, also with your career. But I want to talk about some of those habits and both the health habits and the business habits. And let's go maybe like two or three at each of the most impactful habits that you've formed in both places. Because I think a lot of our audience will be interested in both. But yeah, let's talk through those. What are the kind of the most impactful habits in health? And then we'll go business after.
Yeah. So number one, I don't drink alcohol.
Mhm.
All right. So that's a big deal. Our industry, since the beginning, since I got into it, I mean, happy hours are pretty prevalent, dinners are
Mhm.
pretty prevalent that come with, late nights, and I don't drink alcohol, and it's a cheat code in so many ways, in particular when you show up to those functions or maybe a sales retreat. So that's the number one, I would say, habit for me that has produced so many results, on top of just the health benefits. But health is wealth, so I'm always going to start off with health. The organization I founded for men 7 years ago builds more healthy, resilient men. We need healthy people in general. For the reasons why we're in the industry, we know the numbers are staggering, where we are a very unhealthy country. But it starts with my sleep, Adam. I mean, I'm such a oh goodness, a disciplinarian around my sleep. My wife calls me grandpa so many times, but it's because so many people depend on me, and energy is real. I
Mhm.
mean, it truly is. It's real. And I do think that some folks in the nursing home stay up later than me. Probably most do, but I know my sleep pockets. I know my sleep consistency. I know my sleep performance, my efficiency, the stress that I might feel during sleep. But it's because I also wake up at 4 in the morning,
Mhm.
anywhere between 4:30. I've done that for the longest time, and I train from 4:45 to 6:15 a lot of days.
Mhm.
From there, it's I have my morning battle routine. So I mean, I carry around, and you'll see this on my show, the Resilience Playbook. I've got probably 100 battle guides that I've written in over the past 10 years. That the journaling process and the prayer process is huge for my spirit and for my soul to be able to process emotions and master my emotions. I do all that before people to even really start getting their day going. And that's the keystone habit for me that I always look back to. Yes, my nutrition's on point. Do I have, am I completely rigid? No, but I'm playing the game of longevity. You can't be a legend and not live long. That's the thing. You got to have longevity to become a legend. So sleep, my hydration, my nutrition, my movement, journaling. It's the simple, boring things that lead to extraordinary results that I
Mhm.
adhere to. I'm on top of and have been for a long time with my breath work, my meditation, my visualization. I mean, I'm constantly in thinking time and silence mode. I don't let the computer emails or things of that nature get my cortisol levels so far up. I'm on top of my blood work 4 times for a year. I get 65 biomarkers done. I direct primary care. I have my own personal path. So yeah, if people look at me like this guy, I mean, he's completely on the rigid side. I am, but it's for good reasons because people depend upon my energy. So when my mom passed away, guess what? Well, that month of November and October, who needed me? My family. And I'm there to answer the call when needed most. Doesn't mean I don't feel grief because I have plenty of times. I'm on top of that. So those would be my keystone habits or my atomic habits that make me who I am today. And I just work off of little simple check marks. I mean, every time that I go a day without a drink and I pray a rosary, check mark cross. And I've done that for the longest time. And that's what sets the foundation for everything else, in the professional life. Everything for me professionally is always reverse engineered backwards, constantly from a future state. Understanding how to prioritize the things that matter most matter. Understanding how to get your team to move at an optimal level is very, very crucial. But that requires them buying into the same mindset that I have and same belief system that I have, and them constantly thirsting or being thirsty for growth and having the hunger emotion. I have a lot of great people on my team that don't want to be doing the same thing they're doing 15 years from now, let alone 5 years from now. That's infectious.
Yeah.
But man, those would be the pillars of my life, and you'll never see me get away from it. Even it's not if life happens, it's when life happens. I have my battle rhythms that will always be in constant go mode, so I continue to just move forward.
That's
Hopefully that hopefully that answers your questions. Uh, I mean, the other one that people find very, I guess, unique, and I've done it for a long time too, is that big into, if you look inside my garage, it's a full blown garage gym. I own my own CrossFit gym, but I also have my own sauna,
Mhm.
year round ice bath. Those are things that are important to me, and they really adhere to my health equals wealth
I love it.
form.
I love it. You, I have a similar room that in my house. Yeah. You caught me this morning when we had to reschedule. I was in the sauna at that time, so hey,
Awesome.
it's interesting. Like there's a camp of people that I'm seeing that they kind of like to make fun of the people that have this rigid morning routine that wake up, do all of these things. And you and I have had the chance to be around a lot of successful people, and there are people that are successful without that, but not as many as you'd think. Most successful people have a
You define success however you want to define
Mhm.
success. I define success the way I want to define success, and I will tell you most people are going to try to fit your big dream into their small imagination. So I got away from all that and listening to any noise a long, long time ago. God gave me my life and it was uniquely designed and I'm going to live it to the fullest. Those are the things that center me, that ground me. I know that when I get away from them too, I can feel it. I can feel it. But yeah, I mean, that's why the 24 hours of Murph. Next year, going to Greece. I was supposed to be in Greece this September, but because of my mother's health, had to push it to next year. I'm taking the path of Leonidas,
Right.
247 miles in 9 days. That stuff, that's what I love. I never want to be a finished product, but I can't, continue to pursue that if I don't take care of my health and don't have my habits. And I'll end on this. They might make fun of us, but they really do admire the results that come with it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And that's yeah. We can leave it at that. We're running up on time. I do want to ask one additional question before and I ask it of every guest. But first, before I get to that question, if you've watched this and don't have something that you can go do tomorrow, you're missing the boat. There's a lot of content in this episode that's really beneficial for building your book of business, really beneficial for your mindset, for your health. So if you're to this point, you've obviously got something, but if not, go back and rewatch it because there's a lot in there. Um, Cole, what gets you most excited about being in the employee benefit space going into 2026 and in the next several years?
Well, I have a older sister, and just to frame this answer, my older sister is battling brain and lung cancer. And so my mother, she just passed from ovarian cancer. And so my older sister, she's in her own fight as well. In fact, she's in a neck break next 8 weeks and from a surgery she had last week. The reason why I say that, Adam, is because that's an everyday occurrence within our clients, an everyday occurrence of someone losing a family member, a mom, a spouse, an everyday occurrence of someone needing to tap into their disability because that income is extremely important for their family. So we'll always say this, no matter how much technology enters into the arena, no matter how many cool new toys are presented in 2026, I go back to the fundamental reason of why I do this in the first place, and it's for the people. What we do, it does matter. I'm not just having a conversation with a CFO, CEO, CHRO, or anybody else to try to win your business. No, I know exactly that there's someone like my older sister that is in your specific population that if they do not understand their benefit, it could really harm them and their family, create more emotional turbulence in their life that they just simply don't need. I know that there's somebody in your population that just lost their mother and is struggling with the grieving process, but they're still showing up, coming to work every single day. That's why we do what we do, and we want to help at the highest level. We want to create that positive change and that positive disruption so that our people can unlock the benefits that they're offered and they can really understand it. So that's the first part, or understand why they purchased them in the first place and why they are so valuable. And then the second part is what really excites me, Adam, and we've talked about it. I really love all the conversation on how we are looking to shape and shift the landscape to making it better over the next 5 to 7 years. I like evolution. I'm not scared of change. I like AI. I'm excited to see where it goes, how we can adopt it, how can we leverage it. I'm excited to see where more efficiencies can be put into place to where there's more of abundance of time, which gives people an abundance of purpose. That's what excites me, and new business opportunities that are going to come out of that. Look, where your energy, where your focus goes, the energy is going to flow. So if all you're going to focus on is the apocalyptic side of our industry,
Mhm.
look, you're not going to get far. You're not going to get far. But if you look at the part of our industry that's going to be what the future is, and you want to be a part of that, that's what excites me. That's what excites me, and that's what fires my team up as well, because it gets back to what I started off with in the first place. This is about the people.
I love that. I love that. That's it's interesting that that's been the echo of most of the top performing brokers that I've had on so far is that this inflection point is really exciting because of the opportunity that it creates, where you can kind of get a lot of the industry that's not excited about having to explain increases this year and next year, but they're looking.
And yeah, that's definitely not the fun part. It's definitely getting to the point of, clients are tired. They're tired of this. It's look every year's looked the same for how long? I even said this in a meeting the other day. Do you want to be having the same conversation this time next year?
Yeah,
So if not, then we've got to make something happen. That's just how this is going to work. We've got to think differently. If you're tired of getting a 15% rate increase, or you're scared to go self-funded, or you're kind of timid around technology. I mean, those are things that, brokers are going to change into strategic partners. The day of the broker's done, in my personal opinion. Now, maybe down market, but if you're not in a strategic level, then you're going to get passed by
yeah,
in so many ways.
yep. I agree. I agree. Well, again, Cole, thank you so much for your time. This has been another episode of Benefits Broker Boost. Be better tomorrow than you were today. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Adam.